Welcome to our presentation regarding middle childhood.
Middle childhood is defined as ages 6 to 11 years old. Biosocial, psychosocial, cognitive, and physical development are the major concepts that become more prominent as a child in middle childhood continues to develop. This developmental stage plays a key role in building foundational skills that carry on into their adolescent and adulthood years. As discussed earlier, biosocial development, psychosocial development, cognitive development, physical development are all of the developmental stages that are being focused on in this chapter. The definition of biosocial development is referring to the physical, social, intellectual, and emotional development that relies on genetic, chemical, and nervous system functioning. Psychosocial development is defined as the development of a healthy personality and acquisition of basic virtues. Cognitive development is defined as the construction of thought processes, including remembering, problem solving, and decision making. Physical development is defined as the physical skills and motor skills that involve the use of large body movements, usually involving the body as an entirety. From ages 6 to 8, when we look at biosocial and psychosocial development, we see that children become more independent from their parents and guardians. They're wanting to separate and do more things independently, such as using the restroom and choosing their own clothes. We also see that they vaguely begin to think about the future, such as thinking about, what they want to be as a profession-wise. And they will want to think about, what may happen tomorrow or the rest of the week. We also see an understanding of their role in the world. They begin to understand the meaning of teamwork and how they fit into their family, their friends, and school, and how their actions turn into consequences. We also see a want to feel accepted by peers, by their family, by people around them. And lastly, we see that they put more attention towards friendships and teamwork. We see this as a runoff from wanting to feel accepted, so they turn to finding time to connect with their friends and their family. Also, in the age group of 6 to 8, we look at cognitive development. We first look at the rapid development of mental skills. They become skilled in understanding logical and concrete information, but they do not understand hypothetical skills. They also can provide more detailed descriptions of their feelings and emotions as they become more aware of how others perceive them and how relationships actually work. They begin to have deeper feelings and they can relay those feelings more in depth. Also, we see a more detailed description of experiences. So as short-term memory increases during this developmental stage, the experiences that they encounter can be recalled and evaluated more in depth as well. Lastly, we see a concern for others and less thought about oneself. Children of this age are typically more sympathetic towards the people around them instead of focusing on what their desires, what their wants, and what their needs are. They're super attentive to the feelings and emotions of others around them. Lastly, from this age group of 6 to 8-year-olds, we look at physical development, and we see that children need more, at least 1 hour a day or more. This is super important for healthy bone density, necessary for healthy cognitive functioning, and a strong foundation for leading on into adolescence. Secondly, children of this age should know how to efficiently brush their teeth on their own. They may need help still, but for the most part, they should be able to effectively do it themselves. Parents and guardians should brush their child's teeth up until this age, and then they should teach it as a habit and how to do it independently by themselves. Moving on to the next point, children should know how to use the restroom by themselves at this age. Potty training will take place in early childhood, and this is a vital part of childhood because it leads on into adolescence and adulthood. And this should be nearly mastered by middle childhood. Lastly, we look at their ability to grasp hygiene routine. Children of this age should be able to express themselves in a cleanly manner by themselves. They should know how to dress, shower, brush their teeth, use the restroom, etc. by themselves, or almost by themselves. They may need a little bit of help from their parents and guardians at this age. As you can see, we have split up the age group a little bit. Age 6 to 8. This is, a younger age group where they're just learning some of these developmental skills. So when we move into age group 9 to 11, we see a rise in understanding of these developmental skills and further skills that are developed as they increase with age, and they begin to make new friends. So this leads into the biosocial and psychosocial development of 9 to 11-year-olds. We see that they begin to form more complex relationships and friendships. They become more aware of what the people in their life mean to them, and therefore friendships and relationships become more important to them. As this rises, we see an experience in peer pressure. Children want to feel accepted. They want to feel as though they fit in with their friends. So their friends may influence them to do things that they typically would not do if they were riding solo or if they were with their parents. And all of this is a part of their emotional development, their social development, and how they feel confident in themselves versus how they want to fit in with their friends. Lastly, as puberty becomes closer, the child becomes more aware of their body image. A lot of the times, this is where body image issues and eating disorders are integrated into a personality, because at this age, children begin to care about what they look like, the way they dress, how their body is shaped, and they start to compare themselves to their peers and the people that are around them. And this can lead to major issues if they do not feel confident in their body and they want to look like or feel like somebody else that is around them. Next, we can step into the cognitive development of children ages 9 to 11. This is where academic challenges become more difficult, where they move up in grade levels and their classes need to become more intellectually challenging due to a mastering of basic and fundamental techniques learned in lower grade levels. So this can increase, stress levels in children, and this can be a tough time for children when they're trying to grasp new intellectual concepts in their classes. Secondly, we see that children of this age become even more dependent from their family than they did, from ages 6 to 8. They begin to develop these complex relationships and friendships, and so they want to do things with their peers, and they see that the more time that you spend with someone, the more that you're going to get to know them and the more fun you're going to have together, whether it be, boyfriend, girlfriend, forming relationships of that type, or just friendships. Thirdly, we see that a child begins to see that the point of view of others are important to their person as a whole. They understand that the feelings of others are important and that their point of view can bring different ideas into play. And this can be positive and negative. It just depends on the people that that this child is surrounded by and the types of points of view that they're being influenced by. Lastly, we see an increase in attention span. They're willing to be more attentive and sit still for longer periods of time, and this can be a positive thing and a negative thing. And why I say that is because positively, we see kids with an increased attention span in classes. They can sit there and retain more information instead of dazing off into the sunset. Another reason this might be negative is that this is when children start to develop an interest in things such as video games, and this can really be detrimental to the physical development of a child if they are sitting in front of a screen for 6 hours a day. The last developmental stage I'm going to touch on for the 9 to 11-year-olds is physical. Physical development is extremely important, not just for, the physical aspect, but also cognitive and social development. So children of this age need 1 hour of physical activity or more at least 3 days a week. Physical activity is so important to help kids relieve the stress from school, from peers, from family, whatever it may be. And this is really going to help them to feel better about themselves overall. Physical activity is proven to decrease stress, depression, and other chronic diseases that can develop later in life. The second point we're going to look at is that incorporating aerobic exercise, muscle strengthening exercise, and bone strengthening exercises are all important aspects for the development of a growing child, because this leads into physical, mental health, later down the road when they become adolescents and into adulthood. During this age, like I said before, it's important to limit their screen time because they gain an interest in social media, in video games and things as such. And if you're sitting down for too long during the day, this can take away from physical activity and social interaction and building relationships, which can lead into deterioration of social skills and a deterioration in physical activity, which can really be detrimental to a child of this age moving into adolescence and further on into adulthood. And when we look at the risk of obtaining a chronic disease from being obsessed with the thought of sitting in front of a screen all day. And so this is why it is important for a child to physically develop in this age and build these habits earlier on instead of trying to break them when they're older. So why is middle childhood so important? Well, the development of a child within middle childhood, this leads to a lifetime of development and habits that they will carry on in their life. And the biosocial, psychosocial, cognitive, and physical habits that they will carry are super important to their fitting in society, to their health overall. And the encounters in middle childhood are not always going to be positive, but we hope that even the negative experiences lead to positive lessons that they can carry further and as they develop on in their life, whether it be in adolescence, in adulthood, and further forth. These children need to understand and be taught that doing things with their friends, with their family, and having a balance between school and family and friends and hobbies and physical activity is super important for development. And they will understand that as they get older, but while they are young, they do need guidance. And so we need to help these children as they develop forward into later developmental stages.
Theories of development in middle childhood. Piaget's theory for development in middle childhood centralizes on concrete operational thought and the ability to think logically. Early childhood, classified by pre-operational intelligence, is a time when many of the cognitive tasks achieved in middle childhood are still impossible due to lack of logical reasoning. During middle childhood, concrete operational thought is marked by thought processes such as classification, conservation, reversibility, and serration. All important skills required to begin understanding mathematics. An example, 12 is always 12, conservation, numbers 40 to 49 are in the 40s, classification, 152 is greater than 125, serration, and if 3 times 4 equals 12, then 12 divided by 4 equals 3, reversibility. Vygotsky also has a take on the thought processes of children during middle childhood. The way he differs from Piaget is Vygotsky stresses the need for instruction and mentorship. He talks about the zone of proximal development, which includes tasks, skills, and ideas that are within the realm of being learned if mentors provide assistance, motivation, and teaching. Vygotsky explains a scaffolding, which is a temporary support that is tailored to a learner's needs and abilities and aimed at helping the learner master the next task in a given learning process. For Vygotsky, learning depends on the scaffolding approach, and while there are certain things that children in middle childhood develop and learn, they cannot fully develop those things alone. Kohlberg's pre-conventional moral reasoning is all about self-seeking and self-sustaining behavior, centered around rewards and punishment. Stage 1 is about avoiding punishment while advancing self-interest. It's only wrong if you get caught. Children entering middle childhood still adhere to pre-conventional moral reasoning. They understand authority and obedience, but many times see it as something negative. During stage 2, children do things with the anticipation of a reward. They behave to get something. They do something for others with the understanding that the good behavior will be reciprocated. If stage 1 is about avoiding punishment, stage 2 is about seeking reward. According to Kohlberg, sometime during middle childhood, children shift from pre-conventional moral reasoning, which is similar to pre-operational thought in that it is egocentric, with children most interested in their personal pleasure or avoiding punishment, to conventional moral reasoning, which parallels concrete operational thought in that it relates to current observable practices. Children watch what their parents, teachers, and friends do, and they try to follow suit. When children enter stage 3, they still exhibit some of the same behaviors as in stage 2, but their motivation has shifted. Striving for a social approval has replaced desire for a reward. It is in this stage that many children become more self-conscious, aware of other people's opinions, and more susceptible to peer pressure. This is a stage when young children are very malleable and impressionable. In stage 4, children begin to respect and adhere to rules out of reverence for authority. This is a more morally centered outgrowth of stage 1. Instead of obeying rules and authority to avoid punishment or when being watched, children in stage 4 are more likely to respect authority and rules when no one is watching, because they understand it as the right thing to do. Level 3 of Kohlberg's moral reasoning theory includes stage 5, understanding of and adherence to a social contract. We follow rules because it leads to a better functioning society. This gives more meaning to morality beyond doing the right thing because you are told to or simply because it is right. Once someone reaches stage 5, he or she understands how certain standards and behaviors are necessary to maintain the social fabric and the complexity of prioritizing certain values over others. Stage 6 is the most advanced and almost never reached in children in middle childhood. Most people don't even reach stage 5 until adolescence or adulthood. Stage 6 relies on universal ethical principles, going beyond the situation at hand and exploring moral and ethical truths that go beyond a particular person, group, or culture. What does it mean to be moral? And what is right? And where our values are derived? Stage 6 can often have a religious component. Critics of Kohlberg's theories of moral thought claim he ignores cultural and gender differences in his analysis. Many believe there should be more focus on emotional regulation, empathy, and social understanding, all of which are important parts of middle childhood development. Erikson's psychological theory denotes the stage industry versus inferiority, defining the period of time between the ages of 6 and 12. There are many new skills to be learned and responsibilities to take on in middle childhood. Success in these areas gives children a sense of industry, while failure or struggle can lead to feelings of inferiority. Social rejection is both a cause and a consequence of feeling inferior. Therefore, it becomes important in middle childhood to develop friendships, as children are starting school, spending most of the day away from family and in a new environment. Developing a growth mindset is incredibly important in middle childhood to work through the industry versus inferiority stage. Valuing and learning from struggle rather than fearing failure benefits children in this stage, allowing them to move toward feelings of industry and avoid feelings of inferiority. Giving children tasks such as chores, homework, and small errands help them to foster a sense of industry, while identifying opportunities to learn from and correct mistakes fosters a growth mindset, avoiding a sense of inferiority. During this stage, self-pride depends not necessarily on actual accomplishments, but on how others view one's accomplishments, which is reminiscent of Kohlberg's stage 3 within his conventional moral reasoning level. Like Kohlberg, Erikson identifies the shift in middle childhood from a self-centered view to an other-centered view. However, he seems more focused on individual and emotional growth, whereas Kohlberg seems to look at trends of populations as a whole.
So what is biosocial development? Biosocial development pertains to the interaction of biological and social factors. Today, we will apply biosocial development to children and particularly focusing on their brain development, psychopathology, and topics surrounding children with learning disabilities. What is the typical middle childhood health? The ages of 6 to 11 are defined as middle childhood years. These years tend to be the healthiest stages of a person's life, and this is because of several factors. For one, the mortality rate for this age group is incredibly low because of rare cases of disease, accidents, and infection due to immunization. And secondly, a maturing of the brain occurs in children, allowing them to be more independent and sufficient with caring for their own hygiene and health habits.
When discussing biosocial development of middle childhood, it is important to understand how their brain develops. The increasing maturing of the child's brain occurs because neurons make more connections and their connections increase coordination. However, stress can impact these connections in negative ways by slowing down the maturing of the brain. This is why many children who grow up in negative environments tend to have issues in school and with their learning capabilities. When a brain is coordinating neurons, the child has better reaction time, attention capabilities, and better automatization, their sequence of thoughts or actions.
So in the next slides, we're going to be focusing on developmental psychopathology and particularly on learning disorders in children. So, many children in the middle childhood phase experience disorders such as ADHD, dyslexia, and autism spectrum disorder. In recent years, the U.S. education system has paid more attention to children with these disabilities, and they have put together programs such as IEPs, making sure every student is getting the education they deserve. This also pertains to gifted students as they have accelerated classroom settings to advance their learning. However, these programs aren't not what they seem to be, and there are better solutions that exist. For the biosocial application, I really wanted to focus on IEPs and if they really help disabled learners. So what do IEPs really consist of? Well, they're meetings between the parents, the teachers, and therapists, which talk about present level of education performance notes, annual goals, progress reporting, services, supplementary aids, and also participation notes. Although an IEP may seem like a decent solution, sometimes the process of creating them can be too time-consuming, consist up to too many pages, and be stressful and complex for both the teachers and parents trying to meet. Also, IEPs haven't significantly impacted disabled children's education as seen in these statistics. And although some of these statistics are aimed towards high school students, it shows that if we had better solutions while the child was in elementary school, maybe these statistics would be lower. 12 to 26% of high school students get average or above average test scores on standardized tests, which is way too low. 33% of kids with disabilities have repeated grades. 50% of them have been suspended or expelled from school. 19% of them have dropped out of high school, and 32% of students have received a certificate of completion instead of a diploma. Better solutions do exist for bettering kids with learning disabilities. Parents and teachers are going to have to communicate and negotiate more than ever and implement these solutions. Setting smaller and more focused goals, researching frequently about up-and-coming strategies for learning, staying resilient towards bettering the child, figure out the best way that the child learns, give the child confidence and improve their self-esteem, and allow the child to ask many questions and be as supportive as possible.
Our next healthcare application is the psychosocial application, where we will be discussing how friends and family time affect middle childhood development. Family needs. It is said that children only need 5 things from their families, no matter what type of family that may be. Those things include physical necessities such as food, clothing and shelter, encouragement to learn, opportunities to develop self-respect, time with friends, harmony, and stability. One of the greatest needs of middle children is time to play. Although only briefly mentioned in the textbook, I felt it was important to focus on how recess time can make or break a child's future social and academic life. Recess is a worldwide psychosocial risk associated with middle childhood aged kids, making it also one of the biggest controversies among elementary schools around the world. No one can seem to decide on the appropriate amount of time that should be given to free play during the school day. In the United States, 20 minutes of recess is rewarded on average to elementary school students. If the normal amount of healthy exercise a child should receive is 60 minutes a day, they are only getting a third of the recommended amount of daily activity. The lack of activity is highly correlational to the recent child obesity crisis in America. According to the study on recess times by Ogla S. Jarrett from Georgia State University, many psychosocial developmental phases are impacted negatively on the middle child if they have less recess time in school. Here are a few examples. Child obesity. As child obesity rates increase, the amount of recess offered in schools decreases. Children are being forced to study more in the classroom and are therefore being deprived of the necessary social time they need to develop, particularly in their age group. When children play, they develop many necessary biosocial tools to use later in life, such as childhood customs. As children play with older children at recess, it gives them the opportunity to learn the customs associated with their age. According to the textbook, children teach each other jump rope, rhymes, insults, and superstitions. They also teach each other what's cool to wear. Learning these customs introduces children to their first steps of self-identity. Recess is an important time for kids to practice their friendships. During this time of their lives, children learn the types of people they want to be friends with and the types of people they want to avoid. And unfortunately but true, bullying occurs most of the time out of sight of teachers and other school staff. Although bullying can be harmful to many children, it also gives them a chance to be resilient. Standing up to a bully is one of the best ways a child can understand what they feel towards other people. In this graph, we see how obesity rates have increased over the past 16 years. Obesity in youth has gone up 4%. Fortunately, as schools continue to push back recess time, there are many things that we could do for our kids. A. We could allow our children more time outside of school to exercise. One of the biggest things we can do is push our children to exercise and have fun playing with other children. If the push for less recess and more studying in schools increases, parents need to react by giving their child room to grow outside of school. B. Encourage schools to keep recesses. C. Research international standings. On the next slide, you will find information regarding Finland and how Finland continues to have high educational standards as well as required recess times across schools. The country of Finland is often regarded as having the highest educational system in the world. What is unknown by many people is that Finland also has a mandatory 15 minutes of recess for every hour of study time for its grade students. Although this is not the only thing that contributes to their high test scores, it is substantial enough that it should be considered as part of our own schools in the United States.
Cognitive healthcare and how kids think.
Concrete operational stage is Piaget's third stage of cognitive development. In this stage, children begin to use methods of thinking such as reasoning to solve a problem. This stage is characterized as a development of logical thought. Piaget considered this stage a learning point in children's cognitive development. The 6 stages of concrete operational are seriation, transitivity, decentering, conservation, reversibility, and classification. There is no specific order in which these stages occur. Seriation is the ability to sort objects according to their characteristics, such as length, shape, color, type, etc. Here is an example of arranging according to characteristics of length. Transitivity is a form of inferential reasoning. It is the ability to see that if A is greater than B and B is greater than C, then A is greater than C. Children are able to understand relationships among elements in a series. Decentering is where children take into account many aspects in order to solve a problem. For example, if a child had to choose between which lollipop they wanted, they would choose the one that tastes better, even if the lollipop had the same color, shape, and size. Here is a picture of a cherry and watermelon lollipop. They are the same shape, color, and size, but they would take into consideration the taste instead of the characteristics.
Conservation is the ability to see that objects or quantities stay the same despite a change in their physical appearance. Here we have a picture of two beakers that have the same amount of water. We get another beaker that is taller and skinnier, which makes the amount of volume of water look like there's more water. But in reality, both beakers have the same amount of water, even though the skinnier, taller one looks like it has more. Reversibility is the ability to recognize that things can be changed and turned into their original condition. Here's a ball of clay that gets smashed, but a child can understand that even though the clay was smashed, it can be rolled up into a ball again. Classification is being able to sort or coordinate several characteristics instead of focusing on just one. Here's an example. The question asks if there are more roses or flowers. Being able to determine that there are more flowers is classification. Although there are more roses than sunflowers, overall there are more flowers. Children in the middle childhood progressively gain the ability to regulate and sustain attention, process and retain information, and plan and monitor their behavior. Psychologists and educators use the theories of Piaget and Vygotsky because there is research that actually proves that their theories are quality theories. The information processing perspective has gotten so much more advanced because of technology. Technology allows much more detailed data and analysis that was never possible for Piaget or Vygotsky. Technology allows for access of large amounts of data, ability to seek relevant information, analyze the data that was collected in a more profound way, and expressing that conclusion. By having a more advanced system allows for scientists to better understand the learning process. Robert Siegler says that children cannot just grasp the number system. It takes time and repetition, and he compares it to an ocean beach when the tide is rising. He says, "There is substantial ebb and flow. Eventually, a new level is reached." All this research helps teachers distinguish what concepts and skills are crucial for foundation. Information from various parts of the brain combined in the region called hubs and allows for that learning to happen in middle childhood to be achieved. Having patience is a key for educators in the middle childhood. Learning is a step-by-step process. It takes time for all the domains of the knowledge to come together. During middle childhood, the brain matures more, resulting in connections of various lobes and regions in the brain. Brain connections formed during this stage is crucial. Consider reading. Reading is not as easy as gesturing or talking for the brain. There are several different parts of the brain that need to be used in order to be able to read. These connections in the brain allow for reading to be possible along with other non-instinctual subjects. During this time, children's quick reaction time and selective attention are more distinct. They allow the child to choose when to make a comment and when it is necessary to stay quiet. It also helps with distinguishing wittiness, when someone is being funny or even throwing sarcasm out there. Also, they are able to think about the potential responses of others in a situation. If I say this is probably how they will react. At first, voluntary behaviors require careful thought, but with time, that conscious thought is not required. Memory is both affected by both experience and maturation. During the middle childhood, sensory memory, which is the shortest term of memory, improves a little until the age of 10, and then remains constant until adulthood. Working memory is information processing and improves in the middle childhood stage. Long-term memory also increases, and once working memory enters to the long-term memory, a stimulus is no longer required. Controlled processes improve with age and experience. During this stage, attention span increases and their ability to ignore distractions and become more focused improves. Metacognition is described as thinking about thinking. With the growth of knowledge, these abilities begin to mature. During this stage, the children are able to distinguish whether or not they are reaching their goal. And if they aren't able to reach their goal, they recognize that there is a problem and come up with methods to try and solve those problems. Language plays a huge role in the development of children. Excelling in language allows children to come up with and understand ways to express themselves. This includes jokes, metaphors, and puns. During this stage, children are able to comprehend antonyms and synonyms, and their vocabulary is expanded. A huge influence on language and learning is the nature versus nurture. This plays a huge role in the child's linguistic skills and academic achievement.
Thank you for listening to our presentation on middle childhood.